America's at a crossroads, and only Trump has the guts to fix it. Our museums have become woke indoctrination centers. The Smithsonian literally displays fetish gear while Democrats scream that Trump wants to erase slavery for demanding truth over propaganda. Meanwhile, 3 Americans are dead because an illegal alien trucker who couldn't identify basic road signs was allowed behind the wheel. Biden's America, where your kids see perverted displays in museums and share highways with drivers who can't read stop. Trump's solution is simple. Restore dignity to our institutions and enforce English-only rules for truckers. No more woke garbage poisoning young minds. No more preventable deaths from language barriers. Common sense is coming back, so keep on watching. If you're getting close to retirement or just thinking ahead, you've probably done a solid job of saving, but here's something most people don't consider. How much of that money is just sitting in cash? It might feel safe, but holding too much cash guarantees only one thing. You're losing purchasing power. Inflation eats away at it, and the dollar's value keeps on slipping, and that's why more people are looking at real assets like physical gold and silver to protect their savings. And one company that makes it easy is Noble Gold Investments. Visit nextnewsgold.com to learn more. Or you can call that number on the screen, 877-646-5347. And when you talk to Colin, you tell him Gary Franchi said hello. So, this was just posted 9 hours ago. The Smithsonian Museum has a pride section. How lovely. Where they show off fetish clothing. Yeah, that's a thing.
I want to take you back and show you something I saw when I went to the American History Museum in 2020. There are some legitimately amazing American artifacts in that museum.
George Washington's sword. It's pretty good. These 2 bullets hit each other in a Civil War battle. One of those bullets could hit a guy. Another bullet could hit a guy, affecting a whole family line forever. And now, we're in a timeline in which neither guy got hit. Wow. This tree got wrecked in the Civil War. Look at it. Look at all the bullet holes. Just imagine the chaos that went around that tree.
The hat that Abraham Lincoln was wearing when he got shot.
Now that is wild. I didn't even know they had such an artifact, and it's crazy to see it in person.
What the is this doing in a goddamn museum? Are you kidding me with this?
Degeneracy? Look at the kids looking at
it. This display on gay pride movements put out fetish gear. This was at the entrance of the museum, so every person who entered walked by this. That's right, this was proudly on display in the same building as the hat Lincoln wore while he was shot. Call me prude, but I find this disgusting, and this is one example of what I'm sure is a mountain of woke garbage stinking up these museums. I want to take you back and show you something I saw when I went to the American History Museum in 2020. There are some legitimately amazing...
Can you believe that? That is what was on display right as kids would walk in. Oh boy, here we have it. Starting in 2012, sociologists began picking up on a new trend. White progressives were becoming obsessed with race, slavery, and white supremacy, largely driven by the liberal media, exponentially increasing its focus on these issues. Sociologists called it the Great Awakening.
And starting around 2011, 2012, sociologists started to notice a shift in white liberal opinion polling to where white progressives became more extreme in their views on race than Black and Hispanic Americans. And they called this, the sociologists did, called it the Great Awakening. And when they postulated, where did this come from? Why did white progressives suddenly start obsessing over race in a way that was actually far to the left of where Hispanic and Black Americans were on this issue? They found that the media had shifted radically how it talked about these issues. So for example, in 2010, the words white supremacy were mentioned 75 times in the Washington Post and the New York Times.
But the media is different from museums.
In 2020, the words white supremacy...
You see how they're already trying to but. No, it is the media. The media is the problem, as well as our universities and schools, of course.
Were mentioned 700 times in the Washington Post and the New York Times and 2,400 times in NPR. The word racism, 4,000 times in 2020. The words white and racial privilege from 2013 to 2019 grew by 1,500% in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And the word slavery itself exponentially skyrocketed as a percentage of words. I'm offering this only to suggest...
I understand. I'm just wondering what What do you think is the problem with talking about slavery, white supremacy, racism, et cetera?
So the point I'm trying to make here is that liberals will say, well, this is a reflection of reality, but of course it isn't. This is a reflection of a newfound obsession that was driven by the media, and that doesn't reflect either the moral evil of these things or the historical accuracy.
I do want to dive into what you mean by that, because you say that you don't think it's a reflection of reality. Based on what?
Well,
based on the idea that...
Because the amplification of that language gets burned into the psyche of humanity in the United States. And it becomes a self-perpetuating prophecy. That's what happens. And you have white liberal mothers driving their minivans, white knighting, because they think it's the greatest virtue signal.
Those things don't exist, that white supremacy doesn't exist, racism doesn't exist, that we shldn't be talking about it.
No, it does exist. But when you over-amplify it, it creates distortion.
The idea, obviously all these things I think are evil, but there's not more slavery now to the tune of...
but I think part of the problem,
100% than there was
is that in the 90s...
Yeah, I'm not even going to dignify the rest of that panel. Okay, Representative Eric Swalwell, he says that Trump supports slavery. Prove me wrong. And he posts this post from Donald Trump's Truth Social account 24 hours ago. And he specifically highlights a couple lines. Donald Trump wrote, the museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian's control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. We are not going to allow this to happen, and I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. We have the hottest country in the world, and we want people talking about it, including in our museums. So, yes, slavery was bad. How unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. But what about the success of the downtrodden? Right? Abby Phillip on CNN having a meltdown because her attacks against white people and lies about slavery are being called out by patriots like Jillian Michaels. All races were slaves, and now people benefit from that evil, including Phillip. Will she pay reparations?
Everything. We were having a discussion on the show about Trump's attempts to influence parts of American culture, like the Smithsonian, like the Kennedy Center, and the arts, when suddenly the conversation turned to slavery and race. And Jillian argued that everything in the culture has become now about race.
He's not whitewashing slavery. So he's not? He's not. No, okay. He's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does.
Then what really shocked all of us at the table was that she seemed to try to be minimizing the impact of racism and slavery on American history.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know who
was
the first race to try to end slavery?
That's an incredibly misleading statistic, because even the Americans who did not own slaves also participated in slavery by benefiting from the economic system of slavery, the political system.
Okay, enough of you. Let's see what's going on here. Here is Eric Swalwell, speaking of which. Kyle Becker writes, who is this guy? Is he a publicist for slavery, like a lobbyist on behalf of slavery? Eric Swalwell is challenging Jasmine Crockett for the dumbest member of Congress. It's now a toss-up.
The same thing with another. Who is this guy? Is he a publicist for slavery, like a lobbyist on behalf of slavery? That he would want to erase one of the ugliest things that's ever happened in America and educate our children, especially, about how we make sure it doesn't happen again. He's done the same thing with another ugly day in America, January 6th. He's tried to erase that day and take the heroes of that day, the police officers, and make them the villains so that he also erases his own responsibility. This is what he does.
Wow, he's going back to January 6th. Unbelievable. Shifting to that horrible tragedy in Florida. The illegal who got a driver's license from Newscomb and killed 3 people was only able to read a quarter of the traffic signs and answer 2 of 12 questions on an English proficiency test.
State Police made Dana, 28-year-old Harjinder Singh, is expected back in Florida later this state charges of vehicular homicide. He's currently being held in California without bond. He appeared in court yesterday with the help of an interpreter. He agreed to sign paperwork for his extradition, and Florida authorities must pick him up by August 27. Singh was driving on Florida's Turnpike last week when authorities say he attempted an illegal U-turn, blocking oncoming traffic. A minivan slammed into the trailer, killing 3 Florida residents inside. Following the wreck, investigators with the U.S. DOT gave Singh an English language proficiency test. According to a DOT press release, the driver failed the assessment, providing correct responses to just 2 of 12 verbal questions and only accurately identifying 1 of 4 highway traffic signs. Because Singh, who entered the U.S. from Mexico in 2018, is an asylum seeker from India, the DOT says Washington State violated federal guidelines by issuing him a full-term commercial driver's license in 2023, and they believe New Mexico State Police may have failed to assess his English skills during a roadside inspection. Additionally, the DOT says it's investigating whether California acted within federal guidelines when it issued Singh a limited-term CDL in 2024. Dana, 28-year-old Harjinder Singh, is expected back in Florida.
Couldn't read English. Gavin Newscomb's California. Here's Secretary Duffy talking about English proficiency for truckers.
Listen, this has been brought to the nation's attention with this crash, but this is something that the department has been working on for months. Again, we're concerned that we have too many people who have come into the country. They might have even gotten work permits, and they can't speak the language, and they're getting full-term CDLs. That's exactly what Washington did for this driver, giving him a full-term CDL. By the way, Charlie, that's reserved for American truck drivers, American citizens to have that full-term CDL. And then California gave the same a CDL to him as well when his Washington one expired. But here's the real problem. We came out in May and said, listen, English only, our English proficiency for truck drivers is critical for safety. And now some of the left gave us blowback and they gave us pushback and they said we were being too harsh. They were anti-immigrant. And we said, no, this is about safety. You have to be able, as a truck driver, to understand the road signs, but also if you're pulled over, you have to be able to communicate whether you're at a weigh station or with law enforcement. What's on your load? What are you carrying? Where are you going? Where are you coming from? You have to be able to communicate with law enforcement. And so this driver was pulled over in New Mexico last month in July. After our initiative was fully in the works, and they failed in New Mexico and they pulled him over for speeding to give him the English test. And had they done that, they would have put his vehicle out of service and taken him off the road. But because they didn't follow our directive, he went back on the road and was able to commit this horrific crash in Florida, taking 3 innocent lives with them. And so, again, we're doing what we can at the DOT level. We have to ask for states to participate with us because driver's licenses are issued in the states. We are engaged in a full investigation, and through that, there are a number of issues based on that investigation that we can take to inflict some pain to guarantee that our states are complying with federal law and regulation.
Now, I noticed what you're noticing. I do apologize. We seem to be having some connectivity issues with our speed, and that's why I'm blurry, and that's why our clips are showing up blurry. But the show must go on because Abby Phillips of CNN is having a meltdown because of attacks against white people. Well, we just played that. My bad. Abolitionists founded the Republican Party. Then they ended slavery. The Democrats were not amused. Scott Jennings, 11 hours ago, writes that it's true that slavery is one of the darkest chapters in American history, but it's also true that a lot of brave Americans fought a war to end it.
That's my personal view is slavery was a reprehensible institution. I agree with your words that it was our original sin. We also fought a war to eradicate it and to get over it as a country. And that was a necessary thing that happened, and a lot of people died, and we did eradicate it, and that's a good thing. I think what he's asking is, in our museums, what defines us? Are we going to be defined by the worst moment or the worst institution or the worst mistake we ever made? Or are we going to be defined by what we've done moving forward to get over it and to become the greatest nation on the earth? My belief is that he wants to look at these museums, not because he wants to do away with the idea that slavery occurred, but that he wants to ask a very simple question. Are we going to present ourselves as being exceptional or not? And I think he believes there is an effort by some to continue to try to define us from our worst moment instead of try to focus and define us based on our best moments, which started when we eradicated slavery and began to move forward as the light of the world. And so that's what I think.
Museums, that's what makes us an exceptional nation, is because they tell the history and the story of our country, and therefore, you know, these horrible, horrific moments in our history. The original sin, as Abby talked about, when it comes to slavery, has, you know, we of course did eradicate it, but look where we've come today. And I think those museums, like to your point, make America exceptional. And in museums all around the world that document atrocities, whether it be, you know, from Nazi Germany to eradicating slavery here in the United States, you have to learn the lessons of the past. And to deny it is to defend it.
I don't think he's denying it. And Bachi may want to comment on this as well. But I think what he wants to ask is a simple question. As we present our history, are we spending most of our time focused on something terrible? Are we going to spend more time as we enter our 250th anniversary focused on what this country has done to improve the lives of every single person who lives here? We are the light of the world for a reason, because we're an improving commodity. My personal view.
Yeah, slavery was horrible. CNN's Laura Coates thinks Trump's Truth Social posts about museums are about eliminating the history of slavery, and has Michael Eric Dyson elaborate that fascists are interested in deploying museums as extensions of propaganda. Remember in Italy.
An American.
I want to bring in Michael Eric Dyson to this conversation as well, because I'd be remiss if I did not lean on his mind as well as the scholar that he is. But why are we back here with a conversation from the President of the United States wanting to curate, eliminate the history of slavery?
Well, as Professor Naftali just indicated here, the reality is that museums are bulwarks against collective amnesia. The purpose of a museum is to remind us through independent curatorial impulse, through research, through libraries, through museums, right? To create the collective conscious of a nation and the collective conscience of a nation. And in order to do that, you have to have artifacts, you have to have facts, you have to have deposits made, you have to have arguments made, you have to feature the good, the bad, the ugly. You've got to feature the entire culture. Fascists are interested in deploying museums as extensions of propaganda. Remember in Italy under Mussolini, that's how the museum was projected to further the notion of romantica, the Romanness. We have in this country the attempt to extend the tradition of Americana, a narrow version of what it means to be an American. And for the president to suggest that we are only focusing on the negative, you brilliantly deconstructed that. You demythologized that, Ms. Coates, at the beginning of this show when you talked about the variety of impulses, strands of history that are weaved together in that American museum that happens to be focused on African-American culture and history. And I'll finally say this. Is it called the Jewish Museum? It's called the Holocaust Museum. Why? Because the Holocaust was central to the 20th century in defining genocide and its ability to eradicate and eviscerate entire populations. This is what happened in America. And what's happening now is that a president extends that fascist impulse to use.
Okay, enough of you, man. Yeah, that's what these people are trying to say. He's trying to erase history or something like that. But that ain't the truth. That is not the truth. These people are out of control. President Trump, all he's trying to do is fix this country. Here.
Putting teeth into a decades-old federal rule. President Donald Trump's putting teeth into a decades-old federal rule requiring commercial truck drivers to read and speak English. The executive order signed in April mandates that drivers must pass on-the-spot English proficiency tests as a non-negotiable safety standard. Sean Duffy says the law put in place during the Obama administration has never properly been enforced.
Allowing drivers who cannot read stop signs or understand police officers' instructions to operate an 80,000-pound big rig threatens the safety of every American on our roadways.
The two-step test requires drivers first respond to authorities sufficiently in English. If the driver passes, but the officer suspects incompetency, step 2 requires they pass a highway traffic sign assessment.
A side of the road test regarding this executive order is really about proficiency. Some basic English. When you look at a sign, you understand what it means to protect everyone on the road.
Supporters say the issue is about safety, not politics. Alex Miller is the president and CEO of the Florida Trucking Association. She tells me all drivers, especially those operating 40-ton rigs, need to fully grasp what's on the road.
I think that it is a significant issue, especially when there are so many cross-border trucking companies and then moving goods, back and forth from Mexico.
Failing the test puts the driver out of service immediately and could disqualify them from obtaining a CDL in the future. President Donald Trump's putting teeth into a decades-old federal rule.
You want safe roads? President Trump is working to make that happen.
First ticketed. 2 commercial drivers in Alabama were among the first ticketed under a revived federal rule that requires truckers to speak and read English. The Department of Transportation is now enforcing a Trump-era executive order signed in April, directing officials to take drivers off the road if they fail basic English requirements. The move reverses the Obama-era policy that issued warnings instead. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy confirmed in May that the rule would now be enforced nationwide. Drivers must be able to read signs, talk to police, and keep records all in English. 2 commercial drivers in Alabama.
Long overdue. Started during the Obama administration, right? If you got value from this report, tap subscribe. My final thought is next. So this is about protecting our children and our families. The same leftist ideology that puts fetish gear in the Smithsonian puts non-English speakers behind the wheel of 18-wheelers. They've turned our cultural institutions into grooming centers and our highways into death traps. 3 families are planning funerals because Democrats cared more about being inclusive than keeping Americans alive. Transportation Secretary Duffy said it best, you gotta speak English. It's not racist, it's survival. Meanwhile, they're teaching your kids that America was built on evil while hiding the fact that Republicans ended slavery. And Trump's asking the right question, will we be defined by our worst moments or our greatest triumphs? So here's my question for you. Should museums displaying fetish gear lose all federal funding? Drop a yes or no in the comments. And you can support real American values by checking out our patriotic gear at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. You'll find it linked in the description.